So when we start looking at back pain and say the story of Martin, we go, how does a human being who develops pain make sense of their pain? So what we know from health perception models is that, or illness perception models, is that we're all influenced. If you develop a symptom, say a back pain, what do? You fall back on your beliefs. You fall back on your cultural understanding of what is this? What are the social messages that we're getting and the context? And what are your previous pain experiences? What are the experiences of your mum and your dad? Because we know that if your mum and your dad avoid activity, take time off work, you're likely to do the same. So we learn our behaviours around pain from our peers, from our family contexts, and that's how we start to respond. And based on that, we go, what is it? What's the cause? What's the consequence? What's the timeline? Is this curable? How do I control it? Based on that, how do I respond to that emotionally? How do I act? What do I do? Do I take time off work? Do I avoid physical activity? Should I sit up straight? Should I work my core? Should I stop bending? That could be dangerous. And then does that work? So we see within this health model this whole process where a person has to kind of work out what the hell they're doing, what do they do about it, and you start seeing when you ask people with pain, how many people have you seen? I've seen 8 practitioners. What did you get? 8 diagnoses. What did they tell you? Pretty much all of them told me there's something wrong with my body, but it was all something different. How does that make you feel? It makes me feel like crap. Does that build your self-efficacy? No. Have you got any strategies to manage this yourself? No. I've had a lot of stuff done to me, but nothing I can do for myself. No wonder we're creating misery, if that's what we're doing in the health system. So we ask adolescents, what do you believe about back pain? This is people with no pain. This is adolescents with no back pain saying, what are your beliefs? 38% say back trouble will eventually stop you from participating in physical activity. This is people with no pain. 45% say later in life it will get progressively worse. 60% say back trouble should be rested. This is people, adolescents without any pain. So what do they do when they get pain? They fall back on their beliefs. That's what they do. So we've got a population out there thinking this stuff. It could be worse in your country. I don't know. I suspect it possibly is. Maybe not. So negative beliefs, we know, are associated with disability and care seeking. What do adults believe? Not so different. Adults with back pain believe that you've got to protect your back. Because why? Because it's got to be it's damaged. You're protected by resting, you're protected by being careful with avoiding dangerous activities like bending, like lifting, like being involved in sport, like playing with your kids, like living. You've got to strengthen those muscles, you've got to work your core, you've got to control your posture. They are the kinds of things that people with back pain think. So what underpins these beliefs? The great underpinning of these beliefs is that back pain is caused by injury and damage, and the back needs protected. It's vulnerable. It's a vulnerable structure. And so we start seeing these social messages that come out. You know, back pain's linked to damage and structure. Be careful when you bend. Don't bend your back. It's dangerous. Sit up straight because it's good for your back, isn't it? Work your core because a strong core will protect you. These are the kinds of messages that people fall back on. So what do we see? People with pain sitting up straight in misery, walking around pulling their bellies in, being fearful to bend, protecting and bracing themselves, just like the image you saw of that man when he was picking up his shoe. That is not a normal way to pick up a shoe. So the threat becomes a shoe. It's like, whoa, how did that happen? So this reflects common healthcare practitioner beliefs. It might reflect some beliefs in this room. But there's actually very little causal evidence for any of these beliefs. And I tell you, these are beliefs that I have held past my career. They're beliefs I was taught. And unraveling those beliefs is actually probably very important. So what do we know about back pain? We know that there is genetic predispositions to pain. And they're not around structure, they're around changes in the nervous system. We know that pain is more prevalent at times of rapid change, like adolescence, like pregnancy, like transitions through into menopause, like transitions from time of retirement We see spikes of pain during rapid times of emotional, social, physiological change within the body. We know that how you respond to pain is influenced by your beliefs and your thoughts. It's influenced by your emotions. It's influenced by your social context. It's influenced by the things that you do and the way in which you load your body. It's influenced by your lifestyle. It's influenced by the other health comorbidities that you may or may not have. And based on this, that will impact on your body's structure. It will influence things like whether you develop inflammatory changes around an end plate of a disc. It will influence your nervous system. It will influence the motor system. So we see these profound changes that are impacted by these other factors, and that will have an impact on whether you become disabled or not. We know that there are people walking around the population who have back pain who never become disabled, and they will be predicted by these kinds of factors through here. The cool thing is that most of those factors, a number of them are modifiable. A number of them are changeable. And so the disability around pain can be influenced profoundly based on a combination of those things, and they become our targets of care when we start dealing with people with pain. So we look at people with back pain. This is a group of people with persistent back pain, around 300, that were investigated by Martin Raby, one of our PhD graduates. And he found that there were these three clusters of patients. And this is looking at their psychological profile. And this looked at things like their stress, their anxiety, their level of depression, pain catastrophizing, their self-efficacy. There was a group of people who had both high levels of emotional distress and very negative beliefs around their pain and low self-efficacy. There was a group who had predominantly negative beliefs around their pain and low self-efficacy, but not really high levels of distress, emotional distress. And there was a group who were low. And the interesting thing when you start profiling levels of emotional distress and your beliefs is you start seeing something that's quite interesting. The more distressed a human being becomes around pain, we see that their pain levels are higher. We see that they're more disabled. We see that they're more bothered by their pain. We see that they report more significant life stress events. So life stress events can have a profound impact on our nervous system as it tracks through time. Particularly early life stress factors can set a vulnerability through the lifespan. We see that they're more susceptible to increasing in pain with movement. We see they're more likely to report they feel perceptual differences in terms of where their body is in space. They're more sensitive to touch. They've got more undiagnosed comorbid symptoms like fatigue, dizziness, headache, migraine, and other symptoms. So we see that the higher the level of the stress, the higher the burden. And if you look at within the health system, the most disabled people, the people taking time off work, the people who are really in trouble are those who are really suffering from this problem. And of course, it goes two ways. You know, pain causes distress, and distress can cause pain, and becomes part of that cycle. So within a clinical setting, we've got people who are coping really well. We've got a bunch of people who are pretty distressed with pain. We've got a bunch of people where they may have comorbid mental health problems. That just becomes part of that package. And when we look at something like taking time off work, we just got to finish the paper, that we've looked at people with mental health problems, like a diagnosed mental health problem, and we look at people with back pain. Both of those groups are likely to take more time off work. If they have the two of them, it has a multiplying effect. So you start combining them, it's just a bigger burden.